Thanks for making the Hoops Gap part of your daily routine. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and as part of the Big East Energy Network. If you haven't already subscribed, do so now. We appreciate your support. Lastly, if you're interested in the written word as well as audio, video podcasts, go to Substack. Go to substack.com/Hoops Capital of the World to find all of the work and contributors like our guest on today, T. Baker. He's a Big East beat reporter who writes for us in The Next and is a women's basketball connoisseur. Coming to us from all the way from Tampa, Florida. I feel like we're doing a wrestling promo. Here is T. Baker. T, I'm jealous. You're in Florida about to watch the UConn, UCLA in South Carolina and Tennessee in the Final Four. First question for you is tonight, you got the game day for the women. It's 9:30. Have you noticed them dragging a little bit, having all that controversy about the travel? Playing late Monday night versus UCLA finishing up on Saturday.
Well, hey, Mark. Yeah, on location here in Tampa. It's very hot for this New Englander, but I just try to stay in the AC, I guess, or walk in the morning. I've not seen that. I had the chance to go to open practice yesterday and see the team practice. I think they're locked in. These are 19, 20-year-old kids who've waited their whole life to play this game. I think Geno's grumpier. He's 70. He had to do this long flight. He might be more tired. I don't see any dragging on the player side. I think they're locked in and ready to go, especially Paige. Like this, she knows it's do or die, and this is her last two games. So I don't think we'll see any sluggishness tonight.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I think for me, it's more, I think the preparation part about it, like giving a coaching staff extra couple days to kind of get a feel for what UConn's going to do. But as they say, you can give someone a playbook if they can't stop you. Can't rebound made shots. And Paige Bueckers has been nothing short of incredible this entire NCAA tournament. What can you say about her and the way her teammates have responded to kind of this new Paige?
I think that Paige is showing us what we knew she had. It has shown glimpses of it. I think, it feels like forever ago, but her freshman season, she was dominant. She was player of the year. This isn't new. I just think that it's urgent. There's an urgency. There's every single play, every single moment is do or die. There's nothing being taken for granted. And I think that's infectious, and it's showing across her teammates. Everyone looks really locked in, and Paige is their leader. They look to her for that sense of stability, but they also look to her to amp them up to make the big plays. So she's really just blossomed in her 5 years at UConn to be the leader, not just in her play, but also in her actions, how she carries herself. And I think, she's talked about how in years past, she's felt all this pressure, just wanting to get through game day. But right now you're seeing someone who just loves to hoop and is really good at it, and is bringing her teammates along with her.
Yeah, no, I think it's a unique challenge tonight, Final Four against UCLA. Outside of Lauren Betts, I think everyone, even if you're a casual fan, knows who Lauren Betts is. She's obviously the 6'7" center for the Bruins. Outside of her, who can UConn fans look at as folks that need to be handled or stopped, or kind of just the non-essential stars, like they're others, so to speak. Like who do they have to stop?
I think that one thing that people might not realize about UCLA is that they actually have the top 3 recruits from the class of 2022, according to ESPN's Hoop Girls. So they have Lauren Betts, who was number 1, and her sister, Sienna Betts, is coming in next year to the team and just had a great MVP performance in the McDonald's All-American game. So more of the Betts family coming to UCLA. But they also have Kiki Rice, who played in the DMV area. She's a quick guard. She was one of the top recruits, the second recruit in that year. She played nearby AZ Fudd in the DMV area, so they have some history, some experience playing with each other and against each other. And then Janiah Barker, one of the most highly touted recruits that came in. She committed to Joni Mitchell's program in Georgia, and then when she left, transferred with Joni Mitchell to Texas A&M. And another great get from the transfer portal for Corey Close, who Lauren Betts also started her career at Stanford. So it's a case study and really using the transfer portal to get elite talent. And those 3 are 3 of the top players. Incidentally, it's Ice Brady and Ayanna Patterson, who are the other two of the top 5 of that class. And that played out a little differently, maybe. Ayanna Patterson, we haven't seen much of her, but the talent there. And Ice Brady maybe isn't the superstar that she maybe could have been, but also, a talent, an important part of this team. So there's a lot of pieces on UCLA. And Janiah Barker comes off the bench, 6th Woman of the Year for the Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the rotations. I think Corey Close really brought up a lot of how they're hoping to stop UConn's pressure. She's a very analytics-driven coach. So she thinks about, when the 3-point attempt rate is up, they win. When the defensive rebound, they win. So she's trying to stop those things. And she's a coach who pays close attention to the analytics, which I love. And I think it was really interesting to hear her breakdown of how to stop UConn.
Before we get to how they're going to defend Lauren Betts, do you think KK Arnold will disrupt Kiki Rice a little bit? And how important is AZ Fudd on both sides of the court tonight?
KK Arnold will disrupt anyone, anytime. She's just one of those players that I don't think gets the love she deserves. She's going to be a starter next year. She was a starter last year in the Final Four. Not only is she just really high intensity, she's the heartbeat of the team. She's just a great kid. She's a great team player. She's fun. She keeps things light. So I think she's going to be one of the main X factors in stopping their guards, which also includes Gabriela Jaquez, whose brother actually played for UCLA a couple of years ago. Folks might remember.
Yeah.
And she actually also played on the softball team at UCLA. So just a great athlete. But UCLA, in addition to Betts, who gets a lot of attention, does have elite guard play. So they're going to need, the defensive intensity of KK Arnold. They're going to need AZ Fudd to hit her shots, hopefully this time around, even though when she doesn't, UConn seems to pick up the slack. But I think the piece that I know we've talked about before is AZ Fudd is an underrated defender. So her defensive intensity, in addition to KK's, I think is going to be really important for tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Like, I think for me, when AZ is good, you saw what happened in South Carolina. Like, that's the comp. Like, I mean, like, we literally can go to a specific game where she went crazy against a top contender and they end up winning by almost 30 points. So, and I think that's also why these spreads keep being what they are, because even when they're playing top talent, and they covered against USC, I know no Juju Watkins, and they've covered in the Sweet 16, and they covered in the second round, and they covered in the first round. It's kind of been a theme. I don't know if you've been betting along with me, but the UConn women have made my my vacation coming up in a couple weeks pretty fruitful in that respect. Sarah Strong hitting a couple of clutch free throws at the end to get that spread over 13.5 was pretty nice as well. I was like, oh, we're going to lose here. And then they followed. I was like, oh, there's a win here. Happy nonetheless. One of the things that I've always said is if I bet on UConn men or women and I don't win the bet, but they win the game, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So that element too. But when AZ is that good, I think that's partly, it's like, that's where like Vegas sees them, is that everyone is at full strength. Everyone's firing on all cylinders. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not, a sports bettor. I don't necessarily know how it works, to be honest with you, in terms of how those are made, but whoever's making those algorithms, whatever, is seeing the talent here. And Corey Close, UCLA's head coach, actually did address that yesterday. Someone asked, you are the top seed, not only in the region, but in the tournament. How does it feel to go in as like the perceived underdog? And her response was really interesting. I think I don't know the level of impact or influence it has that UConn has done this 24 times. I assume that must count for something, but this is UCLA's first time in the NCAA. They did make it to the AIAW Final Four previous to the NCAA taking over women's hoops. So a storied program, but it was interesting to hear her analysis of just like, people people sometimes make their bets, decide who's the betting favorite based on history and tradition, and UConn has that. But I think also people are seeing the talent on this year's team. I think ultimately basketball and especially college basketball is about peaking at the right moment, right. And UConn is peaking at the right moment. UCLA is incredibly talented. They beat South Carolina this year. They've only lost 2 games, and those are both to USC. But I think that there's just an element of tradition and also just undeniable talent that's making them the betting favorite this year.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about a little bit more about the game. But then I want to transition it to a topic that Tia said has been on everyone's mind, which is rev share and transfer portal coming up after the break. Now you're back on the Hoopscat Pod. We're here with T. Baker live from Tampa Bay. All right, so one last question about the game tonight. I think the stars are aligned. You know, you have Paige against Lauren. I did a thumbnail basically with the two of them yesterday talking about this game. But one thing I mentioned is I think Sarah Strong and the rest of the bigs are going to have to really hold their own against Lauren Betts. But one thing that I'm curious to get your take on, if anyone talked about this in any of the media availability, is I believe that the pressure that KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade and the guards put on the other guards for UCLA, whether that's Kiki Rice or Janiyah Barker, whoever, those entry passes are for these duck-ins for Lauren Betts are going to be a hell of a lot more contested than they probably have ever faced all year. So it's not just going to be like what everyone says, well, they just have the best, tallest, best player. So, you know, that's why they're going to win the game. There's so much more that goes into that. What do you think the effect of the pressure of the guards and how is Sarah in the bigs? Kind of like a two-part question, the pressure on the guards. And then on top of it, the bigs, once Lauren gets the rock, are they going to double? Like what's the game plan?
It's a great question. I think what Corey Close said yesterday, and she had so much to say. I've referenced her a few times, but she's just a great basketball mind. She actually, side note, used to go to Geno's practices. He let her in when she was a young coach. They share a love of wine. You know, I think it's really great. A great example of how Geno also helps grow the game, right? Letting in others to see what's going on. But anyway, she talked about how actually the hardest rotation that they'll face will be UConn's small rotation with Sarah Strong at the 5, which I thought was really interesting because you would think, okay, if they throw in their bigs, then that's the toughest lineup. But really, UConn's ability to stretch the floor is what makes them special. Like, you have to respect Sarah Strong in the paint, in the mid-range, and beyond the arc. And that goes for AZ Fudd. It goes for Paige Becker. So I think that really what it is an ability to take Betts away from the paint. It makes them have to not just play like a junk defense, you know, in the post. And then on the defensive side, I mean, you have Lauren Betts in the post and she's a bucket down there, but you have to get her the ball. You have to get the ball and you have to be able to run your stuff. And UConn is just so good at disrupting that, especially with the guards you mentioned. So I think it's gonna make it really tough for them to run their typical offensive sets that are centered around Betts.
Yeah, and to your point, when I'm not surprised that Corey Close talked about how the small lineup was going to give them fits, is because what it does is it takes Lauren Betts away from the basket. So it creates spacing, it creates the ability for UConn to do back cuts. Like, so if they're being really aggressive, we got to run them off the 3-point line. Whoop, there's a little backdoor cut to AZ Fudd or to Ashlyn Shade. So like those are things that I want our viewers to look at tonight, which is, I'm not saying don't worry about Lauren Betts because she's going to get hers. You know, at some point she's going to score. I mean, Kiki Uriofan at the beginning of the game with USC looked like she was going to be, you know, unconscious. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call that we'll have to edit that out. But no, so like I really think that that's going to be the biggest issue with that. And all right, through the magic of podcasting, we are back on the show. I'm going to give Nick English, who's a UConn, I think he's an alum or a grad or still in school, called my phone. And so he's going to be on the podcast, whether he knows it or not. And I'll call him back when we're done. So I really do think that that small lineup is going to give them fits because, again, it draws Lauren Betts out. It also can tire her out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you got to chase Sarah Strong around on defense, it's going to make your offense kind of wane a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you use the exact language that Corey Close did about the back cuts and the way that UConn runs their offense. That's been the way they've run their offense for decades now. It's just about Geno's good about not always like the set plays, but about teaching his players the read and react offense and the ability to navigate what the defense is giving them. And so that's why they've been so successful over the years. And I think that's going to be their major advantage tonight as well against a tall player like Betts.
For sure. All right, let's get into this rev share and transfer portal aspect. So Geno had a quote. We'll have to read the whole thing, but essentially to the point of, I'm paraphrasing that, with the House ruling on Monday, potentially, the cap could be $20.5 million. And his thoughts are exactly my thoughts when we talk about this on Big E's Energy Weekly, which is no one's staying to that $20.5 million cap. Like, if you have the money to spend it, you're going to spend. Like, it's going to go back to, NIL has kind of made the money in basketball kind of out in the open now, and it's not in the shadows anymore. Bagmen dropping money on your, front door, or, whatever, your parents all of a sudden are in a 2-bedroom luxury condo in whatever city they live in. But it'll go back to that. Make no mistake about it, because the NCAA has lost kind of collective control of how this all works. So now it's the wild, wild west. And so what are your thoughts on, and what are you hearing in terms of this rev share ruling and everything that's going on?
Yeah, it has been the major topic of conversation here. Every coach has been asked about it. Players are asked about it. Because what's happening right now, and I think this is not great, is that the transfer portal's open and these coaches are having to deal with that instead of being solely focused on their teams. And I think that's a disservice to the student athletes, honestly. Why can't it wait till after the tournament, or at least until this weekend, right? So that it's just 4 teams that are impacted. Like, it's created a dynamic where your coach is half here, half not. And that sucks. Even if you have a great staff, and of course, Geno's staff probably is handling a lot of that while he gets to, be the head coach. But it's disappointing to me, because it's making stories that aren't about the great basketball that's being played. And that to me is a great disservice to the athletes who have gotten here to this weekend. So there's that, right? But
Can I ask you a question around that?
Yeah.
Do you think that the reason why they do it, because on the men's side, that Bruce Pearl was asked that same question. He said, I get it. He said, but one of the things that, and this is something I thought about before, and then he kind of crystallized it. He's like, they shortened the process. 2 years ago, it was like 60 days. Now I think it's 30 or 45, somewhere in that range. And so, because I think it ends the 22nd. So I think there's 18 more days left in the portal. What are your thoughts on this perspective of the reason why it opens like Sweet 16-ish time, like in the middle of the NCAA tournament, is because if it doesn't, then the haves and have-nots can kind of pick and choose who they want, like once the season's over. And you talk about not having parity with the rev share model. I mean, at the end of the season, if it's UConn or South Carolina gets to just kind of go, or Texas, well, I want Olivia Miles, and let's say Lauren Betts gets in the portal, and it's like, I want Lauren Betts too, and they're able to pay her the most money. It's potential. But if a team that like Tennessee that lost in the Sweet 16 gets a jump on them, it's kind of like professional sports. If you have a worse team, your draft is better to kind of create that parity within the season. So I think that's part of it. It sucks that it takes away from the basketball 1,000%. But I think I don't think it was intended that way, but that's kind of the way people are looking at it.
Yeah, that's a fascinating perspective I hadn't considered. I think that does make sense. I'm inclined to say that the haves will continue to get the best players either way, because, like we talked about, there's this quote unquote salary cap or revenue cap, but there's no way that, Deloitte is stepping in to be the clearinghouse of like determining if an NIL deal is legit or not, right? And who knows what that's like. That's just, that to me is a charade. No team is gonna be compliant with that from my perspective. So I think the haves are still going to be able to offer the most money, and the players are still going to want to play at the best brand name schools, whether they're recruiting them early or not. So I do see it though, and I think you're right. There might be some instances of players who maybe go to a team that's out earlier because they got that dedicated time with the coach. They were able to pounce first. But I think by and large, the haves and have-nots are going to spread no matter what.
There's some haves that are not playing. You know what I mean? Like, there's the Notre Dames are out there, LSU's out there. Like, there are some haves that have money that could lure a top player, while Geno and the South Carolina Dawn Staley, their staff is essentially preparing to win a national championship, right? So I get that. I get what you're saying. We'll see, but I think I'm trying to have that perspective versus like this sucks, it's taking away from the basketball.
And what do you think about, I mean, for college sports, I think parity has been an ongoing conversation in women's hoops for a while, right? Because part of the thrill, we call it March Madness because it's madness when a, 14 seed wins over a 3 seed or whatever, but what is your thought about, is parity important in college basketball? Is that taking away from kind of like the soul of the product, or is it actually cool that on the men's side we get to see all number 1 seeds this weekend?
First time it's happened since 2008.
Yeah.
But what I would tell you is that people love. Why are people calling me so much on this?
You're busy today. It's Final Four weekend. You got a lot of stuff to do.
Yep. I swear, man. I think part of it is people love to see upsets early.
Yeah.
They want to see good games late. So, like, if an upset happens in the first round, a 14 beats a 3, a 12 beats a 5, either on the men or the women, who cares? But you do want to see these better teams. Like, no, listen, 2 years ago when UConn played San Diego State in the finals, everyone was all pissed off because, all the ratings are going to suck. Well, like, we didn't care because I wanted UConn to win. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. But last year, and last year on the men's side, Final Four, I believe it was, Purdue and UConn. So that was a great game. But you had Alabama, you had brand names, right? And I think that's what it's kind of like the old joke. Like, if the Lakers and the Celtics are both good, the NBA does everything they can to make that a thing in the finals because that's their golden goose. And I truly believe that in college basketball. Like, back in the day, you wanted UConn, Tennessee in the Final Four. You wanted now you want South Carolina. When Caitlin Clark was playing, you wanted Iowa. Like, so that's just the powers that be that want that, and the fans, because the ratings show it. So I think it's a double-edged sword where, yeah, it's awesome if you predict correctly that 13 versus 4, but lately the best teams are getting better. So, like, I don't think you're going to see these Cinderella runs. What you're going to see is a team in the SEC or the Big East or the Big Ten that underperformed all year gets hot as like a 5 or a 6 seed, potentially win a national championship. But you're not going to see the mid-majors get to a Final Four like Loyola Chicago with Sister Jean like a few years ago. I don't think that's going to happen anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, I think for so long on the women's side, that was like the critique, right? Oh, the tournament's boring. There's never any upsets. You always see the same teams win. And now it's like the pendulum is kind of getting into the middle where, like, that's happening on both the men's and women's side. I think it's kind of been a cop out for people to not cover and support women's sports in the past because, the product has always been good, in my opinion. I think that, and like you said, people want to see the best teams the final weekend. So it's tough. I mean, it's a complicated time in college sports, but I think we can either embrace it or not because it's happening either way.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so as far as the transfer portal, you said that there were questions being asked of players about, like, has like Olivia Miles sent you a message, and is it? I don't understand why people are so shocked about her wanting to stick around. Like, it's just it makes no sense to me unless, like, Paige is a different story, and I think Olivia Miles it could be in this category as well. Unless you can have your agent essentially say, well, yeah, and you're only going to make $80,000 a year as a NBA player, as a rookie, and maybe that goes up when they renegotiate their collective bargaining. But there's this company that wants to pay you $2 million a year to rep their product. Then maybe I go pro, but she could do that at college. So why would you go? Like, that's the point.
With Olivia Miles, so Notre Dame point guard, there's a lot of different factors at play. One is that the WNBA is working on finalizing a collective bargaining agreement this offseason that will significantly change salaries prior to the 2026 season. So
how much the rookie scale is going to go up on that? Or like what the projections are?
The projections I've heard is about 3 times.
Okay.
So right now it's $79K. I don't know, you do the math. 240. I mean, that's what now the highest players are getting paid. So if you think about it going all the way up, then we're looking at somewhere pushing towards $1 million for the top players. Maybe, right? Again, this is all to be bargained. I think that the WNBA needs to do that if they want to stay relevant. in women's sports, the college side has always been the money maker, the one that's gotten the more press. So like it's not surprising that the money is landing more squarely at the college game right now. I think that in a case like Olivia Miles, there's a couple things to consider, right? There's the CBA. There's the ability for her to improve her draft stock. I think she was going to be a number 2 anyway, but next year she has potentially the top pick in the draft, go to a school go to a program that's not Dallas, right? Which there's talk about, is Paige going to go to Dallas? Is she not? But ultimately, I think the surprising part about that is that she doesn't want to stay at Notre Dame. Niele Ivey, when she accepted the job at Notre Dame after Muffet McGraw retired, her first phone call was to Olivia Miles, and that was her first recruit. So she's really the foundation of Niele's vision at Notre Dame, and it speaks to either. We don't know what goes beyond closed doors. There was some talk of chemistry issues between her and Hidalgo, but also maybe it's just that Notre Dame can't pay her what she thinks, what she knows her worth is, and that's something that Notre Dame's going to have to figure out if that's the case. But it's complicated. It's a lot of different factors at play. But if I'm Olivia Miles, I make the same decision.
I agree, 1,000%. Also, too, like the same thing with new media and like people from like large networks going to like Substack and kind of going direct to the consumer. I think at some point you're going to see something similar if the WNBA doesn't get its shit together. Like you're going to see more of the unrivaled stuff where it's like we're just going to go directly to the private equity that loves us and figure out our own deal and call it something different. And sorry, not sorry. We need we want to play basketball because that's what we're good at and that's what we've dedicated our whole life at. And so I think you could see that sooner than later. But there's something that tells me that this collective bargaining agreement, although it's still not going to be where it needs to be, I think it'll end up helping and it'll start to kind of push things to the next level. Change is never quick.
Right.
So I firmly believe that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's get the predictions and spotlight a few players for tonight's Final Four with T. Baker, and we'll let him get out of here and go enjoy that 100-degree heat. All right, we're back. Quickly, T, let's talk about this. So you got all 4. I don't care what UConn is. They could call them a 2 seed. They're a 1 seed. I said at the beginning of the tournament, it's the 5 1 seeds. Like, honest, right? So it also makes me laugh. In a year that all these 1 seeds on both tournaments make it, the only one that's not a 1 seed is the UConn women. Like, how random is that? Think about that. But they have the most titles and the most Final Fours of anybody on both sides.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Someone asked Geno what it feels. I think it was Scott Van Pelt on ESPN jokingly asked, "What's it feel like to be the underdog?"
You said the words underdog and UConn at the same time. Do you think Paige is going to go off again tonight? You think she's going to do what she does and give you another 30-piece, or is it going to be kind of like a mixture of her efficiency and just kind of giving you what she needs?
I mean, whether she scores above 30 for a 4th game in a row, I think is less important of just like her efficiency, her ability to demand the defense and get other players open. I think that's always what made her special. Is she's not just a scorer. She just commands the defense and creates opportunities for others. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't expect she scores less than 20, honestly. And I think it's really though her efficiency that will be the difference maker.
Not that you asked Corey Close this because she wouldn't divulge this, but yet you saw 2 different stark defensive strategies against Paige. Neither worked. Oklahoma played drop coverage. She gave you 40. USC played hedge coverage. She gave you 31. What do you expect to see from them in terms of that? Sarah and Paige, Sarah and Jana, Sarah and Ice pick and roll, middle ball screen, top of the cake.
I think that's their bread and butter, especially with Sarah Strong and Paige Beckers, is that high-low game. And I think they continue to run that. I think, like you mentioned, the back cuts that creates, the way that spaces the floor is just UConn's major advantage. And I think that's going to be really tough for UCLA to stop, even though that's what they're game planning for. Lauren Betts mentioned that's what they've been preparing for. Their practice players have been emulating that 1-2 game of, Sarah Strong. So UCLA is going to come in prepared, but
It's good luck emulating that.
Yeah, right. Hopefully they have some good practice players, but I think that's been their bread and butter all season. I think they're not going to betray that tonight, certainly.
You know what's funny is I just had a thought because he went to UCLA. Wonder if Corey Close calls up Russell Westbrook and is like, "Hey, do you mind? Can you emulate Paige Beckers tonight and help our team out?" Because honestly, that'd be what you need. Is like or he's a little older now, like Baron Davis, like someone that played at UCLA, and be like, "Hey, come help our girls out. Our practice players are the guys that help us out. They're not cutting it. We need someone that's a monster that can really kind of emulate what Paige is. That'd be really fun." Okay, so who steps up for UConn other than the big three, so to speak? Is it more likely someone like KK with her change of pace on defense? Is it Ice, Ashlyn Shade, or someone that I'm not mentioning?
For me, I think it's KK on the defensive side, and then it's Ashlyn on the offensive side. I think she's a quiet bucket, but she hits those shots when they matter. She can shoot from beyond the arc. She's not going to be the center point of the attention of the defense. So I think she's going to be, if she can get 10, 12 points, I think that's huge on top of everyone else. So I'm looking for Ashlyn Shade to be a scorer tonight and look to score, and I think that puts UConn in a good position.
All right, prediction time on both games. I know we didn't really get into South Carolina, Texas, but honestly, I don't really think anyone that's watching the Hoopscat pod gives a shit about U.S. South Carolina and Texas when UConn is playing tonight. They'll care on Sunday. But what's your prediction in terms of the score tonight? How this game is gonna play out, just based off of what you've seen?
So I think UConn wins. I think it's single digits though, high single digits, maybe like a 9-point game, 9-12. But I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be a tight game because UCLA does have scores. They play good defense. So I think UConn wins pretty comfortably, but not as comfortably as we've seen. And then South Carolina, Texas. That's gonna be a tough game. Fourth time they've played each other. I'm giving Texas the slight advantage just because they've been a little bit more.
The Gamecock fans are going to come for you. I'm going to clip.
But I think Gamecock fans can acknowledge that shooting has been a little off this off season for the Gamecocks. They've had a lot of close games, and Texas, because they've played so many times, knows how to exploit those mismatches. Knows how to exploit the what they're getting shown by South Carolina. And I'm maybe just thinking that an upset would be fun, but I think Texas this will win, and it'll be about a 3 or 4 point game. And you know why? That's because they got Rory Harmon, and I don't know if our listeners have seen the way that she is a hooper, but she has an incredible future ahead of her, and they have that star. I think with South Carolina, you have Full Wiley, but they don't have that one star that they can go to in those moments. I think that especially because Dawn Staley's teams that have won have always had that big. Nia Fagan has shown that, Chloe Kitts has shown that, but they don't have that anchor they have in past years. And Texas defense is stifling, and they have hoopers. So I think Texas could pull it out, and I think it'll be a very tight game.
Do you think there'll be frustration for fans if you don't get UConn, South Carolina in the final?
Maybe. I mean, I think that's the matchup everyone wants to see. So probably. And South Carolina fans, they ride with Dawn Staley. And look, I love Dawn Staley, legend, Hall of Famer, no disrespect there. Love to see her be successful. But Vic Schaefer's been here before with many teams as an assistant coach, as a head coach. So he also has that experience, and they're both winners. And I feel like Texas has a certain type of momentum right now that I just can sense. And watch, they get blown out by like 14, because that could happen too. It's happened twice this year, but they have beaten them once. Yep. That's the thing that people need to remember. So we'll see what happens when they toss the ball up tonight.
For sure. All right. I'm going with UConn. I think you're right. I think they pushed the double digits just based off of like running away like they did initially against USC. And then even though USC cut it to 4, they got it back up to like 12. So I think there could be something like that. I think there's going to be a glimmer of hope for UCLA at some point in this game where they're like, we could do this. And then you're going to get Paige, Sarah, AZ to hit like consecutive 3-pointers to crush them and fans. And that's kind of the way – I just feel like that's the way it's been playing out. If UCLA gets out to a big lead, I think that's the only way that this UConn team feels uncomfortable. But they've even done that earlier this year where they came back and almost won against USC. Yeah, they have to have a game like they played against Notre Dame, where Notre Dame is shooting lights out and UConn's kind of like, eh. And I don't think that happens. I think UConn wins by 12.
All right. What about Texas, South Carolina?
I'm going to differ from you. I think it's a defensive matchup, but watching, and I know Kansas State plays good defense too, but like watching Texas or TCU, sorry, same colors. Watching the Texas TCU game in the Elite Eight was really difficult from an offensive-minded person like myself.
Yeah.
And I just don't think they have enough. I don't think they have enough scoring. Like they're really going to have to make South Carolina not like I don't know. Is that game like what's the over under in that game? 100 points? Like is it 50 to 50? Is like first 1 to 50 wins? I think that may be the case actually. So I think it's South Carolina by a nail biter. They've kind of had that arc all game, all tournament in Sweet 16, Elite Eight. So yeah, I think I'm going to go South Carolina and UConn on Sunday night for all the marbles.
All right, let's see what happens. It's going to be a tough SEC battle for sure. I'm excited for it.
All right, T. Always great to have you now on the Hoopscat Pod, powered by Big East Energy Network. Go Huskies. We're going to see what happens tonight. Like you said, I wish it wasn't at 9:30, but I guess we got to wait all day for it.
Yep. Have your caffeine, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to go. Thanks, T. As always, go Huskies.